Good afternoon, class. Today I am recording a quick lesson on different parts of the format, particularly headers and footers, margins, and I'll also be discussing inserting bullets. There will be a few different ways for you to do all three of those. Again, that's headers and footers, margins, as well as bullets. And I'm going to quickly review inserting an image within Google Docs. I know that some of you may be saying, oh, Mr. Wu, but you never talked about inserting an image in Google Docs. Well, you're right. I mean, we did discuss it in Google Slides, and it is the same exact thing. Same exact application. However, just for your confidence and understanding, we are going to go over this together. I also want to, last thing, quickly review a few parts of our book since some students seem a little confused on some things, and as well as the importance of following instructions. With that said, I have right here project 1.2, which in your flip flash pages is page 21. I've seen a few students as I've been doing this work just pass by onto the final page, which is the figure 1.2, and without reading instructions, period 3, listen carefully because I'm just kind of warning you guys as well. They are not reading the instructions. They're simply going here and creating without the instructions. Now, fun fact, Asher and Emily and Victoria, if you guys were to do that, do you know what margin you should set, Dominic, for your image? No, you do not. You'd only find that in the instructions, Trevor. Do you know how big to create your image? No, you do not. You need to follow that in the instructions. Which, speaking of the instructions, right here, everybody eyes up here, when you look at this figure 1.2, do you notice that there are letters next to it? Like next to before you click our logo image, we have the letter A. And down here next to our horizontal line, as well as our footer, we have the letter C. You are not inputting those letters within your final project. Isaac, those letters should only be used to correlate your instructions. Notice, for example, Isaac, that on instruction number 7, it says in the footer of the document, insert a horizontal line. And notice right here, Alana, we have the letter B. Well, when we go back and look at our figure on page 23, and we look right down here, oh, the letter B is right there for the horizontal line. Weird. So it's almost like Trevor and Alana. The reason why they're there in the instructions is to correlate the instructions with what you put within your page. So again, those letters are simply there, Lourdes and Justice, for connection and correlation of the instructions. Does that make sense at this time? Are there any questions before I move on to our very first lesson for today on headers and footers? All right, well, with that said, let's get started. In your notes, you should have headers and footers written out. And for headers and footers, the very first thing you need to type in your notes is you always, write this down, always unclick. Always unclick the different first page button. You'll see it right here, and I am circling it with my cursor right now. If you do not unclick that, or I'm sorry, if you do not click, it's unclick, sorry, it should be always click the different first page. Sorry, make sure that it says always click. If you don't click into that, what's gonna happen is you will get something like this, a continuation of the footer. So for example, footers and headers should be at the top of your page for today. And if we moved on to a second page, well, we have the same thing, Trevor, footers and headers right here on our second page. Now, Mike and Dominic, I know that you guys probably aren't going to have a second page for footers and headers, and Lourdes, you probably don't want to see that again. So how can we change that? That means when you go over here to header and footer, you simply always click the different first page button, okay? So now that I have it clicked and I type it in, header and footers, notice that it won't appear on my second page. Also notice the option button, you could simply remove the pages, you could put page numbers. Aside from simply double clicking, so to manually change the header and footer, you would simply double click. Double clicking is on header or footer. That is the way to manually edit. Okay? But are we always going to manually edit? I see a lot of people not taking these notes. You should be taking them, and I will make them larger so that you can see what I'm writing. Aside from manually editing it, though, if you wanted to actually go here without having to double click, you could also go to Format. From Format, you go to Header and Footer. So the next note that you should have would be Format. And from Format, remember my arrow means click. From Format, then you go to Headers and Footers. It's also an insert as well if you want to type that out. Now, final part of our notes today before we transition is slightly review, and that is putting bullets into our notes, which we've already done before. If you want to put a bullet in, you simply go up here to the bulleted list and you can simply click on the bullets, and then from there you could go down and your bullets would appear. However, I wanted to go over manual bullets. So somewhere in your notes, write manual bullets. All right, for manual bullets, you will simply go to Insert. From Insert, you're going to go to Special Characters. And from Special Characters, you are going to type in bullets. I'm sorry, bullet. And right here, you will see a bullet that you can click on. Notice that it is a lot smaller than the other bullet that manually appear when you come over here above the ruler to click. You can also press simply CTRL Shift 8 and a bullet will appear. In your notes, though, to do manual bullets, what do we do first, class? We go to, very good, from Insert, you then go to Special Characters. From Special Characters, you type in and it will appear. You're going to be doing that in your project today on the footer section. Hurry back, please. Does anybody have any questions over anything that we have discussed so far? All right, well, final part of your notes then. Aside from headers and manual bullets, I said that we were going to discuss your margins. And I have a few notes for your margins today. First thing I want to talk about is the parts. Let's talk about the parts of your ruler margin, which, by the way, it's right up here. Now, normally if you look in your ruler, you're going to see I'm going to change it so that it looks like you normally see it. You see a small blue slider. All right, the top portion is a rectangle, and that top portion of the rectangle, write this down if you want for the parts of your margin. The rectangle, it will change the first line of your indent, specifically where you have just written. So this would technically be my first line right here. We're going to move that back though, and the triangle is your left indent. All right, so again, right here, my first line under manual bullets goes back because I brought back my rectangle, the first line edit, and then I brought my triangle back up here. But it is actually changing the format of my bullet at the moment. And I'm going to bring it all back. And what we're going to do, instead of the parts of the margin, which, by the way, it should say something to the degree of rectangle does the first line and triangle does the left indent. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Justice. You're absolutely right. So triangle does the right indent. Fix this. All right, you may manually change these parts of your margin. However, I find I normally go to File. From File, you're going to go to Page Setup. And from here, you can easily change your entire document's margins without simply manually eyeballing it, but actually manually typing in the numbers. So for example, in project 1.2, you'll be changing the margin by setting the top margin to 2 inches, and the bottom left and right will stay 1 inch. You'll simply from here press OK. You could apply this to the whole document. You could do selected content. And then you could also change the page color from here, by the way. Again, that's File, Page Setup. But we are going to keep it white and change our margin top to 2 inches and leave the rest at 1 inch. We're going to press OK. There we go. It's changed. I'm going to take that away, though, because I like having my notes without the margin changed. Are there any other questions so far? All right, so often, and I highly recommend that you highlight with yellow the file and page setup. because you will be using that one the most, and I find that helps students a lot. With that said, we have now completed headers and footers, bullets, and margins. And we're going to really quickly review inserting an image. Now, Justice, you're going to insert an image from your Google Drive. That inserted image will be, Victoria, from your logos. The logos folder in your Google Drive. So it's the same way, Alana and Joseph, as when you had done this with Google Slides. You're going to go to Insert. From Insert, you go to Image. From Image, you're going to go to Drive. From Drive, notice that my files already are in the logos. Because I had deleted all of my other logos, though, I'm simply going to use this Adrenaline Sports logo. And there it is. Now, Micah, doesn't this look kind of big? Yeah, it really does, Summer. So, Trevor and Summer, you're going to have to change the image size. We've gone over this again, but because my other classes were kind of struggling with this before, let's go over this really quickly. To change the size of this image, of course, I could simply click, and then from the sides, I could pull it down. However, Asher, in your instructions on 1.2, it's going to tell you to change it specifically, resize to 2 inches wide and 1 inch tall. To do that, you could do it one of two ways. Emily, you could either click on replace the image. I'm sorry, image options. So again, Emily and everybody else, it's image options. And from image options, you could go to size and rotation, or you could go to right clicking. And then again, from here to not replace image, but image options. And again, size and rotation. Do not have lock aspect ratio on. Note that in your notes if you need to. Because if lock aspect ratio is on, look at what happens. When I try to change the width to 2 inches and then I go to the height of 1 inch, notice that it will just automatically change the width. So unlock that lock aspect ratio, and then again, you will find that it will just simply bring it to the image size that you have desired. I think that just about does it. Period 3, are there any questions? All right, I'm trying to make sure. I feel like I'm missing something. Let's see. And the skills, we set the margins, we use the header and footer, we inserted a logo and resized it. You already know how to insert a horizontal line. I guess the last thing I'd like to do is quickly review with you. So those of you who are watching at home today, as I ask my students in period 3 these questions, go ahead and try to answer them yourself. Does somebody want to remind the class how to change the header and footer? Period 3, anybody? Dominic, do you remember if I want to insert a new header and footer right here, what would I do? Okay, well, and you're absolutely right. Dominic said double click on this header and then you could write whatever you want. But how about if I don't want to double click on it? Where else could I go, Dominic? Do you remember? Yeah. Yeah, you can click on format, and from there you could also, Dominic, go to insert. It's the same thing. And Dominic, finally, when I am in header and footer, I wanted to change it so that every other page, which you probably would do this if you had in the header or footer a page number, and I wanted every other page number to be different. How would I go about doing that?
having different headers on each page? Or just
It was actually different page numbers, but
options?
very good. So I'd simply go to options and then from here, header format, and then I can go to different first page or different odd and even. I can change the inches from the top, bottom, but I don't want to do that. Last question, Victoria, what do I always need to remember when I click into headers and footers? If I don't want the header and footer to continue on with every page, I need to do something. I need to click something. What is that? Very good, Victoria. Different first page. Lourdes, margins. Can you remind us, aside from pulling right here on the left indent or right indent, rectangle or triangle, and manually changing it by pulling up and down on the ruler itself or this side right here, how else can we change the margins on the entire page? I'm sorry? It's actually not that what you would think because the format is called how something is arranged. It's actually a different one in here. Which one is it? Look at your notes, guys. Micah. There we go, file. And this should be in your notes, so write this down. And remember I said to highlight it yellow because it's so important. From file, Micah, where do I go? Very good. And page setup is all the way at the bottom. So file and page setup, and then you can change the margins, top, bottom, left, or right. You can also change the page color. Any other questions? Oh, I forgot to review bullets. Joseph, bullets, aside from CTRL, Shift, and 8, or coming up here, if I wanted to insert them myself, how would I go about doing that?
You go to insert, and from there you go to special characters,
Very good.
and you go to bullet, and you can insert it.
Fantastic job, Joseph. And there is my other bullet. And I can also, guys, once I have inserted my other bullet, if I want to highlight it and then right click and copy or CTRL-C, I can then CTRL-V and add as many bullets anywhere as I want. All right, with that said, are there any other questions, period 3? Well, that completes our lesson for today. Everybody who is listening in, thank you so much. I hope you found this helpful. And thank you so much for joining class with us. You want to say goodbye, period 3?